Hello everybody, welcome back to North Dakota Car Guy. In today's episode, I'm going to be showing you how to install some wheel spacers. Stay tuned. So, why might somebody want wheel spacers? Why do I want wheel spacers? Well, to answer that question, we have to rewind a second. I was trying to figure out how I can make the car drift better and keep the car inside its power band while in drift. A lot of guys were suggesting to just run a smaller tire. Now, that would have been a good idea, however, I was running 18s on the front and the back when I was street driving. Now, these are actually super big for a car this size, considering that when they came out with 16 stock. So going from a 16 to a 17 is already a jump up. Going from a 16 to an 18 is a massive jump up. Now, I could have just gotten really small tires for the rear, and I did that one time, but the results speak for themselves. Also, I was having a problem with the car wanting to sway a lot because of the high center of gravity. So, I finally mustered up the courage and decided to drain my bank account to its minimum by picking up a brand new set of wheels. Now, when I bought these wheels, the goal was so that they would fit on the front, which with a little bit of tweaking and also a 5mm spacer in the front, they did end up fitting just fine. Now, why would I need wheel spacers? Well, like I just mentioned before, the front is actually using a very slight millimeter in the front. And that was just enough to get the wheel to stop rubbing on the inner tire fender over there, which I'll talk about in a future video. So now that we got the front dialed in, well, the back is, it's way off. Now, the first thing people usually say is, well, just go buy a wheel that will automatically have the offset. Now, sometimes these wheels don't come in the proper offset that you want, or you get a stagger setup, which is where the front is in more and the rear is out more. Now, that's a good idea. However, the reason I did it this way is so that if I'm at the track and I end up popping a tire or wrecking a rim, I could just throw one of these back ones on the front and then we're good to go for more, since I've already got different wheel setups in the back. So, back to the question of why do I want spacers? Well, it's mostly just a looks thing. You can get some added performance by side grip, by pushing out your wheels out more, but it's very dependent on your tire size and the car's application itself. For me, the only reason I'll be pushing the wheels out is just for, well, mainly the looks. So now that you know why I want spacers, now we need to know what kind of spacers to get. There's many choices to choose from. The most obvious and basic one is obviously ones with threads and ones without. Now this is where things start to get kind of controversial with the strength and the reliability of spacers. One thing I'll mention right off the bat is do your research. Doing your research is going to allow you to know, like, if other people's had problems with running with spacers, can your hubs handle spacers? Because as you push this farther and farther out, it's going to put more stress on your internal wheel bearings. So that is something to think about. Based off what I found with my research, I found out that a good safe zone to running a spacer would be about 1/4 of the thread height. Now, your thread height is what keeps all the support from your wheel, along with the inside hub. Now, I need to have a disclaimer that these are not actually hub-centric. I wasn't able to find a hub-centric ring the right size, so this is what you consider lug-centric, which means that the wheel is only sitting on these lugs, and that's going to add a little bit of more stress and wear to your hub parts. Getting something hub-centric means that this hub on here perfectly fits with the inside hub ring on there, and we'll get that to in a minute. So because our wheel is not hub-centric and it is actually lug-centric, we need to pay close attention to how much thread we have. Now, in the car, it has 25mm of thread length, and I want to go exactly 25mm out, which is the equivalent of 1 inch. Now, depending on your vehicle and the tensile strength of your studs, depends on how many of these spacers you can go before you need to get studs. Now, since I'm going exactly 25 millimeters, I went ahead and just got studs right away. Now, this spacer here is actually 20 millimeters, and then this is 5 millimeters. This is so that if I have a rim that's a little bit wider, then I could just take this 5 off, and then we go back to 20. For me personally, and based off my research, you should not go any more than 1/4 of your original threads. So if my thread length in the car is 25 millimeters, that would mean that the maximum amount of spacer that you would run would be about 6.25 millimeters. So basically about 6 millimeters. So this is 5 millimeters. So this would be about the maximum I would go before needing to get more. Once you start going past 1/4, things can get sketchy. Your rim becomes farther and farther from the hub, which means there's less and less thread actually grabbing onto the vehicle, or to your... means the less and less thread that you have for your lug nuts to actually stay attached. So these are all very important things we're going to think about. Now let's go back to talking about our hub centricness by jacking up the car and taking the wheel off. Alright, so now that we have the wheel off, we can take a look at our hub. Now this is the inside ring of our hub. This is actually the wheel hub itself. It's not the brake rotor. Being hub-centric means that this ring will perfectly fit inside of this one. Now, unfortunately, they don't actually sell an exact size, but this is the closest one I could find. This comes in at about 59.9 millimeters. If I grab my micrometer, I can show you how you measure that. That is simply by going to the widest point. That should give us about 59.9 millimeters here. And so if we measure our ring on the inside like so, we should get about 60.1, but this actually fits already, which is nice because it's registering about 59.8, but whatever. That's just personal margin. So when we throw our hub on like so, you can see that when I move this up and down, there is very, very little play. And that's exactly what you want. You want the play to be as minimal as possible. And if I look inside of here, the threads are actually not sitting on the hub. As you can see, there's about a silver, you can see the silver kind of around the hub, or behind our hole there. So that means that this hub is actually not sitting on our threads, it's sitting on this center hub. And that's exactly what you want. You want it so that when this hub is on, it is not sitting or flopping like this between your studs. You want this to be as hub-centric as possible. And that is how you get these videos online of hubs basically just breaking off because all the support is being supported by just these threads. And then as because this is CNC aluminum, if you don't check your lugs, it'll start to move like this, and then it will want to start to wobble kind of like so off this, and then that really wears down these guys, and then just over time it finally lets go. So now we will throw on 2 of our wheel spacer lug nuts. Alright, so with our spacer on, we can go into the second major problem with putting spacers on, and that is the fact that our threads right here are still poking out. Now, certain rims will actually have little cutout inserts to allow you to do stuff like this, but in my situation, 2 sets out of my 3 sets of wheels actually don't have these little areas to have room for this, which is why I need another spacer. But if you remember what I said earlier, I have a 20 millimeter spacer and a 5 to get me to 25, but these right here are also 25 millimeters. So if I throw this spacer on like so, it's actually not gonna fit all the way around. And this is the next big problem when people install wheel spacers, is making sure that all of these faces sit flush with each other, because if they don't, you will also get that wobbling effect over time, and it can cause a lot of stress onto these threads. Because if I put this on, we have the same problem as before, just that now these threads aren't pushed in all the way, which leaves space behind, which allows them to want to rotate and pivot around. So to solve that, I can either buy new spacers that already have the holes pre-made in here, or you could be broke like me, and we'll have to fabricate these to fit on here. And thankfully, that's really simple, so let me show you. Go ahead and grab yourself a paint marker like so, and get it nice and wet, and we're gonna mark all around these threads with paint. Once you have done that, we can go ahead and take our spacer. We want to try and get it as lined up as possible, because there will be a little bit of room for these to play. And just go ahead and press fit it, get that on there, pop it off, and now you can see our holes, but our holes are probably going to look a little, sketch and not perfect. So let's take this over to the table where I got a good trick. All right, so as you can see, we've got our first spacer. What we're going to do is take our second spacer and just line it up with the holes. Now we will simply clamp these together. Now you've got nice equally spaced holes for you to play with. Now don't cry about getting this surface all messed up, because it's going to either get messed up when you put the wheel together, and you're not even going to see this. So yeah, who cares? There, just like that. And there. Look at that. Perfect. Next, take our centering punch and punch all the little X's that we've just made. Just like that. Then if you really want to, you can take a little bit of brake cleaner and it should get that paint right off. Alright, next we'll take our stuff over to our drill press. Putting it in a clamp is going to be the best option, because you're going to want to do this as accurate as possible so you don't get any wobble or stepping or anything like that. Alright, I'm also going to be changing the bit size to what you want to call a pilot. There's a very small drill bit. Be sure to spray it down with a non-flammable lubricant, and one that is cuttable. And I was going to say let's go to town, but I forgot you kind of need a thing called power for this. Power! I wonder if I got that on video. Huh. I think I just got a clip of a bat in the garage. But I'm not sure. Alright, now that we've got our pilot holes, now we can go to a medium-sized drill bit. Alright, so since we got our medium size here, I went ahead and grabbed our other spacer, so we can go ahead and just line these up with our original holes like so, and then just go to town on making the same exact spots. Just make sure that you get these lined up really good, otherwise they'll be offset. Nice, all done. That saves us a bunch of work time. Now let's get these cleaned off and work on the next drill bit. All right, so I've been at this for quite a while now. As you could tell, these get filled in with aluminum, which I forgot about. So my dad made a good suggestion and suggested about using one of these steppers. Now they're very aggressive though, so you have to take your time with these, and you don't want to drill too much away because you can do that very quickly. But I'm going to use this and then go from there. And there we go, like so. Ta-da! Yeah, that worked way better. All right, let's test our piece. And boom, just like that. It fits on. It's even better because now there's like zero play just about. And you want to go ahead and shake around the whole edge and make sure it's completely flush. But now with our spacer on there, you can see that we now have a completely flat surface area to now bolt our wheel to. But before we bolt our wheel to it, we need to finish, oh boy, I can barely get that off. We need to finish putting in all of our bolts. Before we finalize installing all of this, what you'll want to do is make sure this whole surface is clean. Now mine already is, even though it doesn't look like it. And then you'll want to go ahead and add a little bit of anti-seize on the back side of your hubs. That way, if you ever need to, or when you go to take them off in the future, it's not going to be a pain. You don't need a lot on there, just really a light coating. All right, go ahead and add that on. Then we can add our nuts. Now go ahead and get them just snug. You don't want them tight yet. All right, now comes the important part, torquing down these nuts. Now, very important, I do have a little bit of anti-seize on these. Not a lot, a little bit. You want a little bit of anti-seize, and this is aluminum. I know I've said it several times, but I gotta emphasize that this is aluminum. So, after a few times we've been driving this, we will need to torque these again, because as things move, that aluminum is gonna shift as well, along with the heat that comes from these brake rotors. A lot of times when people put these on, especially when they're not hub-centric, we'll get these, put them on, put the wheels on, and then never torque these nuts again. Since we have two separate sets of studs, people might go and be like, well, I did torque it. Well, they're probably torquing these ones and not the ones inside that are actually holding this whole assembly together. So, to do this, I'm going to torque it at about 80 foot-pounds, which is a little bit on the extreme side for a small car like this RX-7. For bigger trucks, it's going to be upwards to 100 to like 120, depending on your application. So we're going to set that to 80 foot-pounds. And we are going to do this in a star pattern. Alright, and go through and go ahead and double check. Alright, now we're good to continue. Like I said earlier, we'll add just a tiny amount of thread locker just on the top of the threads. Just like that, and then when we put our new threads on, it'll actually circulate the whole way. You do not want to like bathe these in anti-seize. And we'll go ahead and add a little bit on our spacer as well. Yeah, you really don't need that much, but it'll work. Alright, now with that all on, Go ahead and throw our wheel on and get our final offset. All right, check it out, guys. We went from all the way inside like this, come across over here, to all the way flush on this side. It looks so good. You can barely see it poking out when you're looking straight at it, which is perfect. So let's go ahead and do the same on the other side. Yeah. I'm going to bed right after this anyway. I wake up. That's a drift car. Oh, but an alternative.